A seemingly ordinary evening stroll transformed into a harrowing ordeal when a young woman found herself ensnared with no means of escape. The atmosphere appeared carefree, suggesting an enjoyable night ahead. Tragically, that evening marked the abrupt end of her innocent life, as a cold-blooded assailant, having meticulously concealed his actions, fled the scene. Despite the chaos, she was found with blood on her, still alive, but thanks to the tireless efforts of detectives, the case was ultimately resolved, uncovering the truth behind the fate of Adrianne Robert and identifying the perpetrator. The chilling reality is that such a fate could befall anyone. Adrianne Robert and her boyfriend were preparing to move into their first home together. From the moment Justin Pounders encountered her, he felt an undeniable attraction, akin to a magnetic pull. As he got to know Adrianne better, he was captivated by her warmth and vibrant spirit, which she reciprocated, leading to an inseparable bond. Justin described her as exceptionally beautiful, a person full of life and joy, someone whose presence was a delight. At that time, Justin was residing in an apartment with a friend, and with their lease nearing its end, the couple viewed it as an opportune moment to seek a place of their own and start building their future together. Prior to their move, Adrianne had been living in a townhouse with her friend Jay, and she decided to host a farewell gathering. There were no specific plans, just an evening intended for relaxation and enjoyment. Unfortunately, a third individual would later intrude upon their night. That evening, Jay returned home alone, completely unprepared for what was to come. A distressing situation unfolded when a call was made to 911. The caller inquired whether the emergency involved police, fire, or medical assistance, urgently seeking clarity on the situation. The individual explained that upon returning home, they found their roommate unresponsive. The roommate had arrived earlier but was now lying still, covered in blood, with her eyes open and dilated. The caller confirmed there was no visible breathing. The operator instructed the caller to place the heel of their hand on the center of the roommate's chest and to position their other hand on top. They were directed to perform chest compressions at a rate of at least 2 per second, continuing this process until help arrived. The operator began counting to assist with the rhythm, urging the caller to maintain the pace. Unfortunately, by the time the paramedics arrived, it was too late. They could only declare the young woman deceased. She was found in the bathroom with a stab wound to her chest. Upon entering the scene, the first observation was the absence of forced entry into the 2-floor condominium. The bathroom, where the incident occurred, displayed signs of a violent struggle, including a broken toilet seat and blood spattered on the walls. The theory of suicide was quickly ruled out, and the victim's partially undressed state led detectives to suspect a possible sexual motive for the attack. Blood stains were also discovered outside the premises. During their search of the residence, the police made a peculiar discovery in the bathroom. Beneath the sheet on the bed lay a cutout measuring approximately 10 to 12 inches. It appeared that the perpetrator had attempted to conceal something on the bed, likely out of fear that it could expose his identity. However, in his haste, he left behind a trace. A meticulous examination of the bed uncovered remnants of male biological fluids, which were promptly sent to the laboratory for analysis. Additionally, the authorities noted that Adrianne's orange Jeep was missing, and they were convinced it had been taken by her assailant. While one group of detectives began canvassing for potential witnesses, another team delivered the devastating news to the victim's family. The announcement was a profound shock to her loved ones, as it felt as though the very ground had been pulled from beneath them. Adrianne had been the beacon of joy in their family, and they struggled to understand why anyone would wish to remove such a vibrant and cheerful individual from their lives. Justin learned of the tragedy when he drove past his girlfriend's house that morning and noticed police vehicles stationed outside. Filled with curiosity and concern, he stopped to ascertain the situation, never anticipating the shocking news that awaited him. What should have been one of the most joyous days of his life quickly transformed into a horrifying nightmare. Shortly thereafter, investigators received a lead regarding the victim's vehicle, which was located in a parking lot at a shopping center just a few blocks from Adrianne's home. The engine was still running. The headlights were illuminated, indicating that the Jeep had been stolen. Once the vehicle was located, detectives shifted their attention to obtaining surveillance footage that could assist in identifying the individual operating the vehicle. They concentrated their efforts on businesses equipped with security cameras and requested footage from a nearby large car dealership, CarMax, which was situated just around the corner from where the Jeep had been abandoned. The security camera at CarMax captured a portion of the parking lot just north of the location where Adrianne's vehicle was discovered at approximately 3:30 a.m. The footage revealed the outline of a man wearing a black baseball cap, with long hair and shorts, who was seen departing from the vicinity of the victim's parked car. To further trace his movements, the police sought footage from a nearby store's camera, as this could have provided a crucial image for identifying the suspect. Unfortunately, the footage from the store did not yield any useful information. Concurrently, a local witness residing near Adrianne reported observing something unusual on the night of the incident. He saw Adrianne and an unfamiliar African American man jogging along Wolford Road. This struck the witness as peculiar, as neither individual was dressed in athletic attire. Adrianne was wearing a dress and carrying her shoes. The witness's account helped to explain the bruises and injuries found on the victim's feet, indicating that despite her apparent attempts to flee, the assailant managed to follow her home. Detectives subsequently brought in Jay, Adrianne's roommate, for questioning to gather additional information regarding their relationship. The entire purpose of the evening was to mark what Jay referred to as the final celebration of their time as roommates. He recounted that they began the night with a few shots at home before opting to visit a local strip club named Diamond Dolls for entertainment. They had frequented Diamond Dolls on several occasions in the past, specifically just the two of them, Jay and Adrianne. The name of the establishment raised some concerns among investigators, as such venues often attract questionable individuals. Given that they had been drinking, they opted not to drive, even though Adrianne had access to a vehicle. According to Jay, they arrived at the club around 10:30 p.m. and remained there for a few hours. While at the strip club, they interacted with several patrons. They took a seat near the stage, where a man joined them. When asked about this individual, Jay described him as an African American male with a baseball cap, possibly from Boston, though he could not confirm this detail. He was of a slender build and not particularly tall. Jay and Adrianne were unfamiliar with this man, having only met him that evening, and they did not even know his real name. After a brief introduction, Adrianne decided it was time to leave, as she needed to prepare for her move the following day. She opted to walk home alone while Jay chose to stay and continue enjoying the night. Jay recalled that the man had made some comments as Adrianne was leaving. The dialogue included references to uncertainty regarding someone's whereabouts, with a recollection of an individual getting up after the person in question had left. It was noted that he inquired about her destination. Following discussions with the club staff, investigators confirmed that both Jay and Adrianne were present at the club that evening, which proved advantageous due to the establishment's extensive security camera system. This provided the police with a significant opportunity to reconstruct the activities of the friends throughout the night, including their interactions and the time they departed. The security camera in the parking lot offered a comprehensive view, capturing all individuals entering the club, including Jay and Adrianne. The footage depicted them walking through the parking lot, and shortly thereafter, at approximately 10:30 p.m. They were seen entering the club, appearing relaxed, as one would expect when anticipating an enjoyable evening. At that time, the club was not crowded, and the clarity of the footage allowed investigators to easily recognize them. Jay reported leaving the club around 2:30 a.m., and indeed, at 2:53 a.m., the footage confirmed his departure, showing him leaving the club alone. He walked steadily across the parking lot, stepped onto the sidewalk, and proceeded home, which corroborated his statement and alleviated any suspicions against him. The investigators then utilized the same footage to ascertain the details of Adrianne's departure and whether she left alone at 1:38 a.m. The footage recorded her exiting the club alone, but shortly thereafter, another man emerged behind her. This individual matched the description provided by Jay, with the cap worn by their new acquaintance serving as a crucial identifying detail. The video depicts the African American man pursuing Adrianne to return a jacket she had inadvertently left behind at the club. After a brief exchange, they proceeded together toward her residence. It is plausible that the man offered to accompany her home, and she may have felt compelled to accept his assistance, regardless of her initial intentions. Upon reviewing this information, the police redirected their focus to the CarMax surveillance footage. A comparison between the recordings from the dealership's parking lot and those from the strip club revealed that they were indeed observing two distinct individuals. Detectives theorized that the actual perpetrator had abandoned Adrianne's stolen vehicle in the dealership lot before departing in the opposite direction, avoiding the security cameras. We faced the challenging task of retrieving Adrianne's belongings, which was particularly distressing as we entered the space filled with her personal items. She had everything prepared for their first night together at the condo, including a lovely outfit she intended to wear for him. Coming to terms with the devastating loss of their daughter, Adrianne's parents arrived to collect her possessions. This endeavor was especially heart-wrenching, knowing she had been excitedly planning for a new beginning with her partner in their shared home. Following a thorough forensic examination, Adrianne's vehicle was also. The forensic lab had completed its analysis of the sheets and mattress from the victim's bedroom and returned the findings. The results indicated that the perpetrator's DNA was present throughout, including on the victim's body. However, a search of the database did not yield any matches. With this information, the police opted to retrace the suspect's movements that night. Detectives reviewed the footage from the Diamond Dolls Club, but it did not provide any significant leads. They considered the possibility that if the camera had not captured him that night, he might have arrived much earlier. Finally, at 5:42 p.m., the same African-American man appeared on screen, and this time, the police were able to obtain a clear image of his face. The next step was to determine how the suspect had arrived at the club. He utilized an uncommon mode of transportation for the area, taking a taxi. This was unusual in a town where most residents own cars and taxis are not frequently used, which ultimately worked to the police's advantage. They realized that identifying him from this point forward would merely be a matter of time. The authorities promptly acquired the passenger's phone number from the taxi service, which was registered to Thomas Frederick. A comparison of his driver's license photo with the surveillance footage from the club confirmed that it was indeed the same individual. Since there was no DNA match in the police database and no solid evidence linking him to the crime, the authorities focused their attention on Thomas Frederick. The detectives conducted round-the-clock surveillance in their effort to obtain a saliva sample from the suspect. They exercised extreme caution to avoid alerting him, as any indication that something was amiss could prompt him to flee. Patience was essential as they awaited the opportune moment. Ultimately, their diligence was rewarded when they successfully retrieved a cigarette but discarded by Frederick. This pivotal moment had arrived, and the evidence was promptly sent to the laboratory for DNA analysis, comparing it with samples collected from Adrianne's residence. At this juncture, there was a shared concern that the suspect might escape the state, evading justice before the police could secure an arrest warrant. Fortunately, the laboratory results were returned much sooner than anticipated. During the initial 40 minutes of interrogation, Frederick maintained a composed demeanor, discussing his acquaintances, friends, and outings to various clubs. However, his demeanor shifted dramatically when the police presented him with a photograph of Adrianne Robert. When questioned about his interaction with her, he recounted, "She bought me drinks, we danced at the club, met a friend, had some more drinks, and then I went to work." When pressed about his activities after leaving the club, he asserted, "I do that all the time." The police continued to inquire about his time at the club, noting that he had interactions with her, and asked if he remained until the club closed. Frederick responded, "I probably left before closing, depending on whether I needed cigarettes or not." Adrianne departed from the club, and they went their separate ways. However, the video evidence contradicted this account. "That is all I remember from that evening, and I am surprised that you showed me that footage, as it merely flashed back to my actions. Yet, you do recall escorting her to the corner, for when I noticed I had left my sweater, I observed that in the video. Indeed, that was the sole reason I got up, otherwise, I would have remained seated." "I understand. Have you ever visited her residence?" "Whether I did or did not, I genuinely cannot recall. I mentioned that when I drink, I do so to the extent that my memory becomes unclear. She went one way, and I went another. You never encountered her again." "I have not seen her since that night when she turned at that intersection. I have not seen her since that evening, period." Realizing that the police were not going to let him evade responsibility easily, he began to alter some of his previous statements. "Please recount what transpired." "We left, and she requested that I walk her home. However, there is someone who witnessed both of us running. Can you recall where you were running?" Yes, she expressed a desire to run, stating, "I think I need to run," and then she began to run. I do not know where I was running, I was simply following her. So, you were not pursuing her, but rather running alongside her? Yes, because she wanted to run, and I am not a runner who has not run for an extended period. Eventually, the detectives grew weary of the ongoing back and forth and confronted him directly with the accusation of cold-blooded murder. This marked a turning point. Realizing he had no alternative, the suspect attempted to frame the events in a manner that would be favorable to him. The situation escalated dramatically after a consensual encounter between the two individuals. Following their intimate moment, a heated argument ensued. During this confrontation, the woman brandished a knife from her bathroom, and in a moment of self-defense, the man reacted instinctively. The knife inadvertently struck her, leading to a chaotic scene where he was overwhelmed with confusion and fear. The police, upon arriving, recognized his attempts to distort the narrative, understanding that he could not entirely evade legal accountability. Ultimately, the detectives secured crucial evidence, resulting in the suspect being formally charged with the murder of the young woman. In January 2014, Thomas Frederick faced trial. During the proceedings, the prosecution laid out their account of the events that transpired that night. Adrianne and her neighbor had arrived at the club together and occupied the same table. After some time, the neighbor departed, allowing Frederick the opportunity to approach Adrianne. However, when she decided to leave to prepare for her upcoming move, Frederick was unwilling to let her depart without a struggle. At one point, Adrianne felt increasingly uncomfortable with his presence and attempted to flee. Unfortunately, he pursued her to her residence, where she sought refuge in her room, believing she was safe. Nevertheless, Frederick was determined to achieve his objective. He retrieved a knife from the kitchen, ascended the stairs, and forcibly entered her bedroom. The injuries sustained by Adrianne indicated that he had coerced her into a non-consensual act. Frederick proceeded to the bathroom, where he completed his actions. In a clear attempt to conceal his involvement, he severed a portion of the bedsheet that may have contained his DNA. Subsequently, he took Adrianne's car keys, drove a few blocks, and abandoned the vehicle in the first parking lot he encountered. Thomas Frederick received a life sentence without the possibility of parole in Florida, ensuring that he will spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. While Adrianne's family finds some solace in the fact that her murderer has been apprehended, it does not restore their beloved daughter. Their only small comfort lies in the knowledge that the individual responsible for their daughter's death will never inflict harm on anyone again. The mother expresses her enduring grief, stating that she will miss her daughter until her own death, often reminding Adrianne of their unbreakable bond. From the moment of her birth, Adrianne radiated a special charm, and now, all that remains for her mother are video recordings capturing her daughter's vibrant spirit. The young woman had merely sought to enjoy a night out with friends, a seemingly ordinary evening that tragically turned into a nightmare when a psychopath targeted her as his victim.